My marriage ended in my early 50s, and by the time it finally broke down, it wasn't dramatic anymore. It was just years of contempt, criticism, and the gradual erosion of being seen as a person. I remember, for example, walking in the back door after work some evenings and immediately wishing I could turn around and walk back out, get in the car and leave again before the first interaction even happened. One night, I'd walked in and I was standing in the kitchen reading a bill on the bench, in the kitchen bench, when I was criticized for standing in literally the very worst place in the kitchen I could. Now, I wasn't blocking anything important. I was just seen as inconvenient. I almost never responded to those sorts of comments because, as many of us know, the cost of pushing back is often far too high. It's escalation, criticism, and more emotion. But this time, I remember taking a deep breath, looking up and saying, imagine it's not me standing here. Imagine it's someone different, someone you actually care about, maybe even love. Would you speak to them in the way you just spoke to me? Now, that produced this time maybe 30 seconds of reflection before everything returned to being my fault again. The system just simply rebooted and reset itself. And looking back now, one of the hardest things about the end of a long relationship is not simply just accepting that it failed. It's facing the real possibility that parts of it, perhaps, were never really what we believed they were. Not fake, not entirely without love, but perhaps built on a very different foundation than the ones we could see at the time, the things that we imagined. Something we assumed had grown out of mutual attraction and shared values may have also been about that system, about the roles we could perform inside that system, a system we could barely even see at the time. As men of Generation X, many of us were raised inside a template we rarely, if ever, stopped to examine, a pattern that was set for us. House, marriage, career, children, barbecues, school, communities, endless responsibility, endless usefulness. Now we chose those lives, and we are all responsible for our choices. But I think many of us also moved through those years assuming that if we were dependable, stable, capable providers, then emotional security and lasting connection would naturally follow. When we were younger, we rarely, if ever, pictured our retirement years alone. But later, sometimes painfully later, after the dust has settled, we begin revisiting that relationship through a different lens. We begin asking whether we were ever fully known and loved as people, or whether we were valued primarily for the role that we played at that stage of someone else's life, as part of a system we barely understood. And when the role itself that we played stopped carrying the same meaning, did the relationship itself just simply collapse underneath it? This is an extremely difficult realization to sit with. We could, for example, examine all of those years, looking for the signs we should have spotted, perhaps kicking ourselves for not asking the tough questions early enough, especially of ourselves. But there is a line here that many of us have to draw between pointless rumination about the past and genuinely learning our lessons so that we can live the next chapter happier and with wisdom. This channel is about men finding their identity after 50 and navigating the transitions to the next chapter of our lives. If this connects with you, then please hit that like button and give this video a thumbs up. Look, life is complicated. I think sometimes our younger selves perhaps are protecting us from decisions that we just shouldn't be making too early. For example, if I had really understood the full, terrible future cost of that relationship at the beginning, would I have just walked away? Would I have chosen a different path, knowing it meant never having my child, never becoming the person I became through fatherhood, through responsibility, through endurance, and even through suffering? Honestly, I don't know. I would not choose the suffering again, obviously, but I also can't wish away the life that emerged from it. And I think this is where many men find themselves after divorce in later life. Not simply alone, but disoriented, trying to work out who we are once the provider role and all the performative socializing and the usefulness all falls away. Who are we if we are no longer only what we can provide for other people? That question can feel frightening, but it can also become the beginning of building a more conscious and honest life than the one that we were living with our eyes closed.